We see you, the one behind the camera, making sure the moments that matter get remembered. Shutterfly turns your memories into something that lasts, like photo books that tell your travel stories, photo blankets that feature your favorite cuddle buddies, or a canvas print that brings you back to the moment you said, "I do." Big moments or everyday ones, Shutterfly makes it easy to keep them close.
Make something that means something. Shutterfly.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's. Like the strawberry watermelon refresher, the mango pineapple refresher with popping boba, and the Sprite berry blast topped with cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire?
The sun's out, and so is our new drink lineup. From the Blackberry Passion Fruit Refresher to the Dirty Dr. Pepper. And they all pair perfectly with some fries. Refreshers contain caffeine. Va-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you are new here, my name is Will, and each week I narrate your real-life paranormal experiences as well as cover some famous paranormal cases along the way. Before we get into this week's episode, as always, I need to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers who are Kat C, Lindsay Ryan, Chloe Loop, Jason Owen, Calvali Rasmussen, Janessa McIntosh, Todd Van Voris, Diane Mitchell, Claudia, and Amber Reynolds. Sorry if I mispronounced any names there, I'm trying my best. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon, and if this is something you're interested in, you can find the link in this episode's show notes or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast. Over there you can gain access to ad-free main episodes as well as exclusive scary episodes. But now, let's get into our next paranormal encounter. I went out with an Australian guy between 2001 and 2006. Let's call him Joe. The first time Joe and I went to Melbourne to visit his family, we spent some time at his grandparents' home in the suburbs. His grandmother was small in stature but large in personality and very sweet. His grandfather was more imposing physically. He was very well read and had what you would call passion for knowledge. He seemed particularly impressed when asking what my parents did. I told him my father was an academic, a physicist and cosmologist, and we spoke about him for some time. Needless to say, he and I got on well. He seemed to like me a lot. We spent a very enjoyable and uneventful couple of weeks at Joe's family over Christmas and visited his grandparents a few more times before we continued on our travels. We were in the midst of backpacking around the world, and I got to know them both quite well, spending quite a few hours chatting to Grandpa before returning to the UK. Fast forward a couple of years or so, and Joe was asked to be a groomsman for his friend back in Melbourne. So we planned another trip over. Very sadly, not long before we returned, Joe's grandfather suddenly passed away. I remember us arriving back in Melbourne, and as you can imagine, everyone's mood was quite subdued. Joe's mum and aunt had been taking it in turns to stay with his grandmother to support her and just keep her company now that she was on her own for the first time in decades. After we'd attended the wedding, which took us away from the city for a couple of nights, we took over for a couple of nights and went to stay with Grandma. Their home was a bungalow with 2 bedrooms, one being Grandma's and the other having been Grandpa's. We were sleeping in his room. On the second evening, there was 3 of us. We were sitting in the living room, Joe and his grandmother on the couch and me on the large armchair, which had been his grandfather's favourite spot. We were watching some movie or another. Eventually Grandma slipped away to bed, and not long after, Joe said he was feeling tired and went off to bed as well. I stayed up to watch the end of the programme, but it didn't take long before I had nodded off as well. I was woken from my nap a few moments later. I knew it had only been a few moments that had passed. The same programme was on. I had this distinct feeling that someone was holding my hand that was laying on the armrest. This feeling lasted about 30 seconds or so before abruptly disappearing. I remember wiggling my fingers and hand a little on the armrest during this experience, but the feeling of pressure and resistance as if something was holding it persisted. I sat there for a few more minutes trying to make sense of what I had felt. There wasn't anything visible on my hand during the feeling. I wondered if this altered sensation was due to it being in an awkward position like pins and needles, but my arm had been resting freely on the armrest, and this sensation had also stopped very abruptly. I came to the conclusion and kind of made peace with the fact that it possibly might have been his grandpa just saying hi to me. Not that I have a history of being a staunch believer in the afterlife, but I struggled to find any other explanation. I mean, we did get on in life, why not in death? Unfortunately, that feeling of comfort didn't last long. I got up and went to bed. Joe was already fast asleep, and although it took me a while to fall asleep myself after that experience, I just kept thinking about it over and over. I eventually fell asleep. At some point in the very early morning, about 3 or 4, I woke up. The room wasn't pitch black. You could make out the furniture in the room. I remember turning my head over to look at Joe, and I saw what I can only describe as a thick black cloud standing over him at the head of the bed. I remember thinking that I couldn't see the bottom of this shape, and I assumed it went to the floor. It was tall, and it was drooping or bending over Joe as if it was looking closely at him. I completely froze. I didn't dare move, and I remember just staring at this thing. The edges of whatever this was not defined, but it kept some sort of shape. It felt like I was staring at this thing for ages in exactly the same position, but it was probably just a minute or so. I eventually gathered enough courage to try and wake Joe up. I was loudly whispering his name and shoving him. He remained sound asleep. I was terrified and also very conscious of the fact that if I started screaming or yelling and it turned out to be an optical illusion or a piece of furniture that looked different in the dark, I would not be very popular and never live it down. But these explanations were quickly disproven when the shape started to straighten up from its stoop. Witnessing that made me feel like I was a deer in the headlights. I watched it then seem to turn and start to move at a very slow pace towards the foot of the bed. It then seemed to be moving towards my side of the bed. This thing didn't seem to be floating or gliding. To me, it seemed like it was walking. All I wanted to do was to throw the sheets over my head, squeeze my eyes tight, and curl up in a fetal position and not move a muscle. It was like you felt like you were a child and you were scared in your own bedroom. I stayed there, frozen, until I finally dropped off into a doze from exhaustion sometime later. I don't know whether the shape continued its journey over to the head of my side of the bed. I didn't want to know. When I woke up and the sun had risen, there was no longer anything to be seen. I did tell Joe about my experience. He was clearly struggling to take me seriously and put it down to delayed jet lag or something. I even said that I didn't want to stay one more night in the house, but we planned on spending 2 more, and not wanting to be rude to his grandma or annoy Joe, I decided that the only thing to do was to take a couple of tablets of diazepam that the doctor had prescribed to me prior to our trip to help with my fear of flying. And I did that for each of the 2 remaining nights, so if anything else did happen, I would hopefully be in too deep of a sleep to be aware of it. It worked. The remainder of our stay was uneventful, or if it wasn't, I was completely unaware of it. The day of our departure from Grandma's house, Joe's mum and aunt arrived to take over from us. And before we left, I asked them both in this nonchalant tone whether they had experienced anything unusual in the house since their dad had died. His mum, very matter of fact, said, "Oh yeah, Dad's still around. We've been hearing and seeing things ever since the funeral." We split up about 6 months later, and I never did get to go back to that house. Thank you to Katy for sending in our first paranormal experience. And now, let's get into our next. I had an experience in the early mid-1990s when I was about 14. It wasn't something that took place over several months or years, but there were 2 events which occurred in a matter of a few weeks. As I'm older now, and this was over 30 years ago, I wonder if it might actually have been something paranormal. I've not really told many people, and I don't honestly know if I believe in paranormal stuff, but I do find it all fascinating. I was visiting my older sister. She had moved out and was renting a flat. She was in her mid-20s and lived alone, and I would go and stay over quite often. Where she lived was quite near to where our parents were. She also worked close to where she lived, and I would usually catch the bus from home and then wait for her at work, and we would walk back to her place together. This was in a small town in the East Midlands in England. On one occasion, I went to meet her after work. She came to reception where I was waiting, and she said she had to work a little bit later than expected. So she gave me her keys and said, did I mind walking to her flat by myself rather than hanging around for her? I said okay. It was around late autumn, early winter, and it was about 5ish on a Friday night, so it was kind of dark. But I didn't mind, as it was a fairly short walk and I knew that area really well. She said that she would ring me on her landline when she was leaving work. I began walking back and it had started raining, so I ran the last bit, let myself into her flat's foyer and waited for a lift. I didn't wait too long, caught the lift. I was feeling lazy, got off at her floor, and to give some context, there are 6 flats on her floor. As you came out of the lift, you turned and her flat was at the end of the floor in the corner. You had to walk through one of those heavy doors which separated the floor into 2 sections. It had a very large, clear pane of glass in it, and you could see through all the way to the corner of the floor where the lifts were. When this door closed, it made quite a loud noise, and if you were in the hallway of my sister's flat, you could clearly hear the door closing with a loud and distinctive thud. I had been in the flat for a short while and I was watching TV. It was dark outside and I remember it was still raining. It did feel weird being on my own there alone. I probably was feeling nervous. She hadn't called yet. It was only a few minutes after the time she said she would leave, and I thought perhaps maybe she might have forgotten to call or hadn't been able to use the office phone to ring me. I remember looking through the spy hole of her door to see if I could see her. I remember when I did that, I could hear the creaking of the lifts, and I heard the lift stop on her floor. So naturally I thought it might be her, and I opened the front door. And I could see through the door halfway down the floor that there was an old man who walked out of the lift, not my sister. I can still picture him. He had a dark blue flat cap on, and I saw some white hair showing from underneath his cap. He was wearing an old, dark, bluish grey coloured Mac, and I could see that he had light grey trousers and dark shoes, and he was carrying an old-fashioned striped shopping bag. He was a bit stooped over and was walking pretty slow. He was walking towards the end of our floor and was reaching out to open the heavy door. I'd never seen this man before. I knew the neighbours on my sister's floor by sight. I was a bit intrigued as to who he was visiting, and then my sister called. The phone was within arm's length of where I was standing in her hallway, and I answered it. I only glanced away for a second or two to answer the phone. My sister said, "Hi, I'm leaving now, I'll see you in a minute." And I said, "Bye." That was the whole call. I looked back and the man was gone. And I did remember thinking to myself it was odd, as I hadn't heard the door close, and I hadn't heard any of the other front doors open or close near my sister's flat. I looked around again and eventually closed her door. It was then that I realised that this man's Mac wasn't wet, nor was his hat. But I thought he must have had an umbrella and it was probably in his bag, or I simply hadn't seen him carrying it. A few minutes later, my sister buzzed to be let into the building, and I buzzed my sister in, and she was with two of her work colleagues. We all had a coffee and a chat. It was nice. We had a laugh, and they were telling me some funny stuff about what had happened at work, and they were making plans for their night out that next day. After about 20 minutes or so, one of the girls said she wanted a cigarette, and she offered to walk the other colleague to the bus stop who was leaving, and she would have a smoke while she was outside. So off they go, and after a short while the buzzer goes again, and it's this friend. After returning, she had seen their other friend onto the bus and had come back to get her things. So we let her into the building, and she comes to the apartment front door, and we open it, and she's so pale, practically shaking, and the first words out of her mouth were, "I think I've just seen a ghost." I remember her coming in and sitting down, and us sitting with her. She looked dreadful. Her voice was clearly trembling. I was a bit freaked out, to be honest with you. I had met her a few times and had never seen her like this. She was always a really bubbly and chatty person, and I'd never had anyone tell me that they'd seen a ghost before. After a little while, she said that after her friend had caught the bus, she walked back to the flat and had buzzed to be let in. She went and called the lift, and when she got in the lift, an old man walked in with her. She hadn't noticed him waiting and assumed that as she walked into the lift, he must have got into the foyer and was behind her. She said that he didn't acknowledge her while they were both in the lift. They both got out on the same floor, and she was walking behind him. She said he was walking quite slowly, She said she walked around him and decided that she'd hold that internal door open so he could easily get through. After all, he's an elderly man. She said that she opened the door and held it open and turned around, and this man was gone. She said no front door had been opened. She didn't hear anyone fumbling for their keys or unlocking a door, pushing it. No sound like that. She said it happened within a split second. She literally turned around and he was gone. I was so freaked out by this. I asked her to describe him, and she described the exact same person that I saw. She even mentioned this distinctive shopping bag, which the man I saw had as well. She said that she noticed the bag because her nan had the same one. I thought it was such a weird coincidence. I told her and my sister what I had seen only about an hour or so earlier. I remember saying it out loud and thinking how calm I sounded. Maybe I didn't want to upset anyone. I think I thought my sister would laugh at the both of us or tell us there was a straightforward explanation, but she was open to what we had both experienced and didn't recognise the man from our description. After a while, my sister's friend left, and that was that. Or so I thought. About 8 weeks later, I'd stayed after school for a while for an event and went to my sister's for dinner after school. I remember getting to our building and I was about to press the buzzer to ask her to let me into the building, and I saw that the main entrance door was open and was slowly closing shut, and I thought someone's just walked in. So I managed to catch the door before it closed and I didn't need to buzz my sister's flat. So when I got to the lift, I saw the same man from a few weeks before walking to the lift. He was wearing the same clothes, carrying the same bag. He didn't look at me or acknowledge me. I mean, this man must be a living, breathing man. A physical person, not a ghost. I did feel a bit scared, and if I'm honest, I didn't get in the lift. I decided to walk up the stairs. It was only a couple of floors up. So when I come out of the door to the stairs, I was at the end of the floor by my sister's flat and walked a very short distance to her flat, and I was about to knock on her door and I heard a noise, and I turned around and I saw the man walk out of the lift towards me, walk towards the door at the middle of the floor, and then he disappeared, and I can only describe it as vanishing. I was looking at him approaching the internal door. I could see him through the pane of glass, and then he simply wasn't there anymore. I just remember knocking on my sister's door, and when she answered, I told her what had happened, and the two of us checked the floor and found no sign of this man. A couple of weeks after this, my sister told me that she had mentioned what had happened to someone at work about the experience me and her work friend had had. Someone in work said that they knew someone who was living in my sister's block and that she would give them a call and see if they knew anything. My sister told her that she didn't want any names mentioned. She didn't want to be known as a weirdo in the place where she lived, basically. So the following day, her colleague told her that she had rung the person who lived in the same block as her and asked them if they had any strange sightings or if anything weird had happened in this block. Eventually, it turned out that this person who was living in my sister's block said, in a very matter-of-fact way, it sounds like they saw old Bill. Bill had been a resident in the block for quite some time and used to live on my sister's floor, but not in her flat. It turned out that he had died quite suddenly at home about 3 or 4 years before. He used to come back home at about 5 p.m. most days after going to the local newsagent to buy his copy of the local evening paper. And it turned out that a few people living there or visiting the block had seen him, and they believe that he's still following the same routine. And it's usually the same description. Seems pretty harmless, never speaks to anyone, walks into the lifts and out onto the same floor, but doesn't walk through the door. I wasn't sure if I felt relieved it wasn't just me or my sister's friend, or feel sad for this Bill character. I never saw this man again. My sister moved out not long after to live with her boyfriend. I'd love to know if he is still following the same routine. Thank you, Jenny, for sending in our second paranormal encounter. Don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com, and it just might get made into a future episode. As always, thank you so much for following the show, supporting the show, and bearing with me. I know the episodes have been a little bit sporadic lately, but I'm hoping to get these out once a week and back to normal. Thank you for listening, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
We see you, the one behind the camera, making sure the moments that matter get remembered. Shutterfly turns your memories into something that lasts, like photo books that tell your travel stories, photo blankets that feature your favorite cuddle buddies, or a canvas print that brings you back to the moment you said, "I do." Big moments or everyday ones, Shutterfly makes it easy to keep them close.
Make something that means something. Shutterfly.
This season, everyone deserves a little more, and Mazda delivers with the extended driving range of the CX-50 Hybrid, so you can spend more time together. Standard all-wheel drive in every Mazda CUV, including the CX-5, and room to bring everyone with 3-row seating in the CX-90. Find more reasons to celebrate the season at the Mazda More to Move You sales event.
Every Mazda CUV offers you an elevated driving experience and refined performance. Discover it at your local Mazda dealer today.
They say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. At Amica Insurance, we know what matters most to you. And we work even harder to protect it, together. As a mutual insurance company, we're built for our customers and prioritize your needs. Amica, empathy is our best policy. Visit amica.com and get a quote today.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's. Like the strawberry watermelon refresher, the mango pineapple refresher with popping boba, and the Sprite berry blast topped with cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire?
The sun's out, and so is our new drink lineup. From the Blackberry Passion Fruit Refresher to the Dirty Dr. Pepper. And they all pair perfectly with some fries. Refreshers contain caffeine. Va-da-ba-ba-ba.
Your phone is your lifeline. Calling your kid to say goodnight, waiting on a job callback, or just sending a meme to your best friend when it's been that kind of day. Wherever life takes you, the TextNow app keeps you connected for free. Get a real phone number, unlimited talk and text, and 5G data for your favorite apps, all for $0 a month. No fixed contracts, no hidden fees, no panic when bills pile up, just phone service that's there when it matters most. TextNow. We've got your back. Download TextNow in your app store today. Wireless plans require the purchase of a SIM card. Visit textnow.com for terms and conditions.
Campus life is full of compromises. Tiny dorms, zero closet space. But with HomeSense, you can overpack stylish bedding, storage, and decor without overspending. HomeSense, the home of no compromise. Part of the HomeGoods family.
Adventures don't always go as planned. 1 minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus, optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.